Welcome to the Explainer. We're about to dive into some of the absolute weirdest, most bizarre passages in the entire Bible, the Prophecies of Ezekiel.
Yeah, you heard that right. We're starting here. A prophet of God is told to lie on his side for more than a year and cook his food over, well, human waste. Now, your first reaction might be that this guy has completely lost it, but this isn't madness. It's actually a really powerful form of divine communication called a sign act.
And to really get what's going on with Ezekiel, you have to understand this one key idea. We're talking about prophecy as performance. He isn't just speaking God's message, he's literally acting it out for the whole world to see.
Think of it like this. It's divine street theater. Instead of just delivering a sermon, prophets like Ezekiel were basically commanded to put on a show. These sign acts are visible words from God. They were designed to be so shocking, so unforgettable, that you just couldn't ignore the message.
And this wasn't just a one-off thing for Ezekiel. He performs a whole series of these acts, 9 of them. Each one is like a different chapter in a terrifying story, and they all point to the exact same ending, the total and complete destruction of Jerusalem.
So let's dive into the first and honestly the most elaborate of these performances. It's basically Ezekiel's one-man reenactment of the siege of Jerusalem.
Okay, so picture this. He's told to take a clay brick and carve a map of Jerusalem on it. Then he has to build a tiny model war zone all around it. We're talking siege rams, spattering rams, the whole shebang. That iron griddle, that's the impenetrable wall, a symbol of God turning his back on the city. And that bared arm means one thing: attack. He is literally war-baming the city's destruction for everyone to watch.
But the show didn't stop there. He then had to act out the horrifying conditions inside the city. He eats these tiny starvation-level rations, all weighed out perfectly. And then we get to the most shocking part, the command to bake his bread over a fire fueled by human dung. It was a gut-punch symbol of the defiled, desperate conditions of the exile to come.
Now, this command was so disgusting that Ezekiel, who, remember, is a priest, actually pushes back. He's like, whoa, hold on, Lord. I can't do that. It violates every purity law I know. So God makes this one small concession. Okay, you can use cow dung instead. But the terrifying message, that stays exactly the same.
Now, on top of all this bizarre theater, there was a very specific and kind of a puzzling timeline attached to the whole performance.
First up, Ezekiel has to lie on his left side for 390 days. That's more than a year. Each day represented 1 year of punishment for the sins of the northern kingdom, the house of Israel.
And just when you think he's done, he has to flip over and lie on his right side for another 40 days. This time, it's for the 40 years of punishment for the southern kingdom, the house of Judah.
So you're probably asking, what's with these specific numbers? 390 years? 40 years? Well, as biblical scholar Dr. Michael Heiser puts it, the honest answer is nobody really knows for sure. People have been trying for centuries to make these numbers line up perfectly with history, but there's just no clear consensus.
And, this confusion actually tells us something really important about how the book of Ezekiel is put together. It's not a diary. It's highly unlikely he was literally stuck on the ground for 430 days straight. It's much more likely that these were separate performances that were later grouped together in the book by theme, all to drive home one powerful, unified message.
So let's move on to the next sign act in this story, which paints a brutally clear picture of what happens after the siege is finally over.
Get this. Ezekiel is told to take a sword, not a razor, but a sword, and shave off all the hair from his head and his beard. Now, in that culture, this was a sign of absolute humiliation and deep mourning. And the hair itself, well, that represented the people of Jerusalem. He's then told to divide all that hair into 3 equal piles.
And what happens to each pile is basically a terrifying infographic of the city's fate. He burns 1/3 of the hair right in the middle of his model city. That's for everyone who will die from famine and plague inside the walls. He takes the second third and hacks at it with his sword for those who will be killed in the fighting. And the last third? He just throws it into the air to be scattered by the wind, symbolizing all the people who will be forced into exile.
So, wow, after all this terrifying street theater, what's the final verdict? What was the ultimate message for the people who had to watch all of this unfold? The message was one of absolutely uncompromising divine judgment. The book makes it crystal clear. This destruction is not some random accident. It is a direct result of Israel's rebellion, which God says was even worse than the sin of the nations around them.
This was God's fury, plain and simple. But then, right in the middle of all this doom and gloom, there's this one small detail you could almost miss. After he divides up all the hair for destruction, there's a tiny bit left over. He's told to take just a few of those hairs and tuck them safely into the hem of his robe, and this tiny little action carried so much weight. It was a promise. It meant that even in the midst of total chaos and destruction, God was going to save a small remnant. He wasn't going to completely abandon his people after all. So when you look at all of Ezekiel's bizarre actions, the point becomes so clear. This wasn't insanity. It was a divinely ordered communication strategy. These sign acts took abstract warnings about judgment and turned them into something you could see, smell, and feel. It was a visceral experience that made the message unforgettable. And that message was twofold. Terrifying judgment was coming, but there was also a tiny, persistent glimmer of hope. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How does actually seeing a prophecy like this, instead of just hearing it, totally change its impact?